We've come to a crossroads in America, where on one side is technology, and on the other side, individual liberties, God-given liberties. We have to choose. What I'm talking about specifically is the Metaverse. And if you don't know about the Metaverse, you want to listen into this show. Welcome to this episode of Bold and Blunt, and I'm Cheryl Chumley, your host, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. So what do you know about the Metaverse? It's the next step of artificial intelligence, of technology, of really a surveillance state, a police state even. Before I get into that, I want to give a quick heads up. If you like Bold and Blunt and would like to subscribe, first off, love to have you. Thank you so much for even considering that. And second off, you can do so at WashingtonTimes.com. Go to the bottom of the page where it says newsletters. Click on it, find my name, and subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter, which contains all my commentaries that I write for the Washington Times, as well as my twice weekly Bold and Blunt podcast. Or you can go to edify.app/podcasts and pick up Bold and Blunt there. That's the platform for the faith-based podcasts that you need to get you through these dark times in America. Of course, Bold and Blunt is also available wherever podcasts are available. So what do you know about the Metaverse? You've probably seen the headlines. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook fame is now moving into this new technology field where he wants to create this new universe where it can all be controlled by him in the end. What the Metaverse is the next step, the next stage in the shiny world of technology. And what it basically is a second reality. An alternative reality, a reality where you create your own avatar who lives in this reality, which is already being populated by businesses, other people, retail, currencies. And the hope is that this growing technology will progress to such point that you won't need virtual reality goggles or any type of equipment to enter it. It will be a single gateway where you can just step into this reality and live a separate life. You can go food shopping in this separate life. You can taste food in this separate life. You can go to the movies. You can go to the beach. You can travel to places far and away and experience all that these far and away cultures have to offer in these separate lives, in this separate reality. And it'll be something that is going to be enticing to a lot of people, some for good reasons. Some say can't afford to travel, so they want to see what it's like to live in Italy. Or someone in the city who has never had opportunity to travel to the coast and see the beautiful coastline and experience a swim in the ocean can do so through these virtual reality gateways. But like everything, there's a downside. Like everything, there comes a crossroads where you have to decide, shall I go this path toward good or shall I travel this path toward evil? And like so much in life that is evil, you very often don't know that you're traveling the path of evil until you're stuck in it, until you're stuck on it. And honestly, that's like so much technology these days, right? Take facial recognition. Now that sounds like a great tool for police to have so they can scour crowds of people to find, say, a terrorist, or find, say, a child molester or a kidnapper. Sounds great. But you give away that type of technology to law enforcement, then it very easily becomes a nation where police are constantly surveilling society at large. People in society at large who have not been accused or even suspected of committing any crimes. And the other side of the thought on that is, well, if you have nothing to hide, then this shouldn't bother you. And yet, privacy is a key element of individual freedom. If you give away a chip of individual freedom here, a chip of individual freedom there, pretty soon you have moved from a realm of rights coming from God and a society of individualism into a new world where rights are only those that government deems proper for you to have. A society of collectivists, a society of collectivism. You have to be careful with technology. It's oh so easy to shift from the good into the bad. What about microchipping? Sounds great when it's in your pet. What a great idea. If your pet gets lost, someone finds your pet, brings them to the local vet. The vet scans the shoulder area. Voila, here comes the address of the rightful owner. But it starts to become questionable when we think, maybe we should microchip Grandpa because he has Alzheimer's and he has a tendency to wander from the home. Then it becomes a little bit squishy on the ethics. Do we microchip our children to keep track of them? Do we microchip our employees to make sure they're not taking breaks longer than deemed proper? Or so we can locate them easily, say in a hospital, in an emergency situation? How about biometrics? Biometrics for identification purposes. Do we scan the irises of children as they enter school buses so parents can know with assurance that their child actually boarded the bus? Do we do that? That's actually happened in America, down south. There was a case where a school system decided that it was in the best interest of the children to scan their irises as they boarded the school bus. Oops, though, they forgot to get permission from the parents before they did that. What about cameras everywhere? Cameras on the street corner. We have issues in this country with cameras at the red lights to catch speeders. But some states, some jurisdictions are putting them in anyhow. They are great revenue raisers. Just ask D.C., Washington, D.C. government bureaucrats. That's how they get a good portion of their money. But also with cameras everywhere, we're not just catching speeders, we're catching people who aren't speeding. We're catching innocent people. You know, China mounts cameras everywhere. Everywhere you go in China, you are being surveilled by someone in the government. Is that what we want? You have to be careful with technology. You have to be careful in a country where the people are rapidly turning away from biblical values and virtues into a system where every man and woman decides what's best based on their own moral compass, based on their own determinations of what is moral versus what isn't moral. Because police and government in business to protect the citizens of the United States may consider it more moral to mount cameras everywhere in a community to keep those citizens safe than uphold the limited government privacy protecting aspects of the Constitution for those citizens. We're already walking a balance in this country. Which is worth more? Security or privacy? The safety of the nation, the God-given right of the individual. It used to be common sense, constantly sided on the idea of God-given rights first, government and collective second. But we're at that tipping point. We're at that tipping point already. We've got free speech being censored everywhere by woke corporations, for crying out loud. Our free market system is being weaponized against us. We've got social media, surveillance and censorship on such a regular basis that some of us are just throwing our hands in the air and just saying, well, that's how it is. We need to just get off the platform, and that's the only way to solve that. Because God knows how many more hearings do we need in Congress before Congress actually acts. And they won't act because congressional members get a lot of money from some of these leftists in the social media circuit. But this metaverse is the tipping point here. This could actually be a point of no return. The metaverse, it's a network of 3D platforms, of the virtual 3D world. And it's supposed to be like Twitter, like Facebook, like all these social media platforms. It's supposed to be one of those great ways to meet people and make connections and just have a better understanding of humanity the world over. We're supposed to connect with people on the other side of the world and draw parallels between their way of thinking, their way of living to our own, and in so doing, generate a better understanding of humanity that, hey, we're all humans, we all have the same wants and desires and goals, which in my view is a little bit untrue, but there is some logic to that type of connecting. There is a good sense of understanding of humanity that takes place if you are blessed enough to be able to travel the world. So social media in that respect, on the good side, does form those type of connections, and it does foster that type of understanding. But we don't want to get to the point where social media replaces reality, right? I mean, if you have a life that you're not happy with, the saying used to be, change your life. If you have something in your life that you want to change it. But you don't change your life by stepping outside of your life of reality and creating a second life based in virtual reality. And this is the road where Metaverse leads. It gives you an opportunity to create this entirely new life, which sounds enticing, sounds good, especially if your life sucks, right? But don't buy into the deception. It's not a real life after all. It's like thinking those followers on Twitter and your friends on Facebook are your real friends. They're not. I mean, some may be, the people who are your real friends and family. But by and large, most of your connections on social media, it's not real. You don't know that person. You really don't. Well, in the metaverse, who are you going to know for sure? It's a fake, created, fabricated society. And we're being told by the likes of Mark Zuckerberg that this is the wave of the future. This is where we should all head. This is the new shiny technological development that we should all embrace because it will make us better as humans. It will make a better humanity. Well, I don't know about that. When it comes to humanity, I'm going to side with God that He knows best and that He knew best when He created humanity. Check it out. Check out what the metaverse is. After listening to my next guest and I discuss it, I hope it prompts you to do some research of your own. And that brings me to my very excellent guest today, Tom Basile. He is a news host on Newsmax TV. He is a published author of Tough Sell, Fighting the Media War in Iraq, and of Let It Sink In, the Decade of Obama and Trump. He was the executive director of the New York State Republican Party. He served in the administration of George W. Bush, and he's a columnist everywhere. Most notably, of course, at the Washington Times. He's my colleague at the Washington Times. So I'm very happy to have you, Tom. Thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt.
Thank you, Cheryl, and what you do every day.
Thank you, and likewise. I'm so glad to have you as a guest because I wanted to discuss the metaverse with you because it seems like some people have no clue what this is. And I know that you've done some research into it, and I'd just like to toss it to you to sort of explain in layman's what the metaverse is.
Well, Cheryl, you and I have talked about this, and we talk about it a lot, particularly you on your podcast. You've talked about it in your books. We discuss it on Newsmax. We talk about it at the Washington Times all the time. And that is how you have this coordinated effort over the last several decades now between academia, big corporate, leftist media, and now big tech and these digital platforms to erode American pride, to erode American morality, and to indoctrinate society and shift society in a very, very real way. And the metaverse is really the next step of all this. The way that I feel, the way that I feel like when I talk about this, I look at everything that has come before is sort of like they were just softening us up. They were softening us up to make us more malleable. They were softening us up to enable a platform, and whether it's Meta, the metaverse, or some other type of virtual reality platform,
right?
To give it a foothold in American society. And we talk about China now, and I think that a good thing has happened over the last year or so, and that is people are starting to really kind of take notice of the Chinese social credit system. We see the rise of the authoritarians in China, Russia, and Iran. We're having a more robust conversation about that, but think about the metaverse as the Americanized version of the Chinese social credit system,
right?
Where we are going to be separated from our physical bodies, our physical being, our interactions with people. We're going to be separated from our faith in God and from our institutions, and more people are going to get sucked into this. And when you and I were talking about this a week or so ago, we were looking at, okay, we know now that social media has negative emotional and psychological impacts on young people, on all people. I mean, look at how it has degraded American society and the way that we deal with each other as human beings. And it has been this cancer in many respects on American society. Now take that and incorporate technology that stimulates your central nervous system, that technology that allows you to develop your own world that is separate and apart from the actual real world. That is going to be the new opiate. It's going to be worse than heroin,
right?
For millions of Americans, and the ripple effect of that on our economy, on our government, on our privacy, on our basic liberties it cannot be understated. And I'm so glad, Cheryl, that you're having this conversation, because a lot of people aren't talking about the dangers of Meta.
Right.
You are. I appreciate that.
Actually, I appreciate you proposing this idea to me and bringing it to my attention, because it's been under my radar as well. So this is a good discussion to have, because I'm betting there are listeners right now who don't really even understand what that term means. They think it's just something wonky or sci-fi or nerdy. But what it is this big tech's effort to bring all of the world to the next level of virtual reality, where you, Tom, and me would have an avatar and we would conduct business and live in this sort of virtual reality world. And it's a little bit scary because businesses are actually buying into this notion. They're setting up virtual reality businesses where people can actually buy and sell right now and live in that world. It's odd, but it's the ultimate surveillance state, isn't it?
It absolutely is, because everything that you do on one of these platforms is going to be surveilled. so right now when you go onto social media, or when you go onto a website, the cookies or the algorithm analyzes your behavior, and then it directs advertisers to you, or it directs you to certain content. I mean, this is how people also get, we have a content manipulation problem in this country, where the algorithms of these platforms are, they can be manipulated so that you see only certain things. And we talk a lot about big tech censorship of conservatives. Well, that's going to be put on steroids with this. So when you think about Meta and going into the metaverse or a virtual reality universe and setting up your profile, you're going to be monitored. Everything that you say, everything that you do, your information is going to continue to be sold. And then the other thing that they'll start to do is this also feeds into the idea of digital currency.
Yes.
So your spending right now, your spending is monitored because you're buying stuff on Amazon. But this takes it to a whole new level. And remember, if you don't have privacy, you don't have freedom. And if some entity, whether it's the government or one of these private concerns, has the ability to monitor you, and has the ability to manipulate what you see, when you see it, and how you see it, you're basically living in a police state.
Exactly.
And that's the type of thing that should really scare the heck of us. And the other thing, Cheryl, is this is going to be, like I said, this is going to be a drug. One of the reasons why the left in this country is so focused on the victimization culture and this constant messaging about that turns our vision of America, our view of society, upside down. I mean, this is what the transgenderism craze is all about, right? Oh, there is no such thing as gender anymore. Or it's about making you want to develop this ultimate escape from your miserable life, and that's this virtual reality platform that you will spend, hours a day on, potentially. You're going to have kids that are going to get sucked into this, where they'll be spending hours a day with headsets and earphones in, where they have created their own reality, where they're the popular kid, or they're the kid that's scoring the winning touchdown, and then when they have to take that off, they're not going to be able to handle it. The mental health crisis in this country is going to skyrocket because of these virtual reality platforms. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're not exaggerating the impact of this, and my big concern right now is I think many people hear the word metaverse and hear like Mark Zuckerberg talk about it, and they think it's just simply the next shiny new technology tool. It's kind of fun. It's a new game. And we've got this whole generation of kids who have grown up with video games, and the more virtually reality that these games have grown, the better they are to them. So the younger generation is going to be very difficult to warn about the dangers, don't you think?
Absolutely, and this is why parents need to get involved, grandparents need to get involved. First of all, you mentioned Zuckerberg, and I thank you for doing that. If anybody thinks that Mark Zuckerberg has the best intentions for America's children, for the future of this country in mind when he is doing things, think again. Zuckerberg isn't just that pale-faced college kid that created the Facebook, so that, and we all remember why Facebook was created. It was created so that Zuckerberg, who was very unpopular in school, could make fun of girls. He could make fun of the way that women looked, and he would call them barnyard animals. I mean, that was basically, they would share these pictures of their fellow students, and they would make fun of them. That was the genesis of Facebook when he was in college.
Wow.
So now that guy has now become one of the most powerful tech oligarchs in the world. He's totally unaccountable to anyone. And In 2020, he put $400 million into something called the Center for Tech and Civic Life, which was a voter education program that funded drop boxes and other efforts that were supposed to be nonpartisan. And he got involved in the 2020 election in a way that was incredibly dubious. Him and his wife Priscilla, $400 million of their own money. Now, Zuckerberg is dumping money through the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, $350 million into the justice reform, the criminal justice reform programs, including something called the Just Trust, which advocates for reduced incarceration. So when you look at these cities that are literally becoming killing fields, and these DAs and these soft on crime policies that are making a lot of young people victims in this country, that are helping to fuel the crime crisis that we see, these spikes in crime. We talk a lot about George Soros. Frankly, Zuckerberg may actually be a bigger player than Soros in the whole octopus of different organizations that are promoting these soft on crime policies. So if this metaverse is now his latest creation, this is not somebody that has the best interest of people at heart, or the best interest in the future of this country as a strong and free society at heart.
And Zuckerberg already has dirty hands when it comes to Metaverse, his own work on Facebook with it. There was, which I guess is called Meta now, right?
Yes.
But there was a woman who entered Metaverse, and her avatar that she created was sexually harassed and gang raped. So these things aren't just figments of imagination or hyperbole to talk about. There's some actual behaviors that can come about because of this transfer into the metaverse that Americans need to really slow the roll on.
Absolutely. And look, the regulatory environment, the politicians are always behind the eight ball on this stuff.
They are.
And look, there are going to be people who say, hey, you know what, this is great. I've always wanted to go to the Louvre. And this program is ultimately, as it matures, I'm going to be able to put on a headset that connects in some way, that also has some sort of way to connect to my central nervous system. And I'm going to be able to walk through the Louvre. I can't afford to go to Paris, but I can walk through the Louvre and I can see what it's like to be there. And yes, there are some positive things that could come out of this, but the downsides are enormous. We have to be very judicious about how much of our privacy we are willing to sacrifice to these big tech oligarchs and these big tech platforms who work. A lot of them work together in concert, and as we have seen, they also work together in concert with government entities in the deep state.
Yes.
We saw that all through COVID.
Yes.
So you've got to look at the downsides to this, and there have to be guardrails. And Washington's not going to do it. There could be a way, maybe, for states to get involved in looking at this. Look, the Wall Street Journal did a phenomenal, not to promote another platform, but they did a really good investigative report on Facebook, on the damage of Facebook and Instagram and it's having on young people. And remember, suicide and drug overdoses are now the biggest killers of young people in this country.
Yeah.
And it should shock no one that spike has occurred at the same time as our major platforms are telling people that they should move away from their faith, that religion is totally phony and it's useless, and you have these digital platforms which have become addictive to so many Americans,
right,
and influence the way that so many Americans think. So we have an opportunity here to take a look at this and be very and get ahead of the game. Be very, very skeptical of anything that Zuckerberg is involved with, and the impact that this can have. We're human beings, all right? God created us to contacts, physical interactions. Our brains work a certain way. I mean, this is why when you see people that are only interacting on Zoom, the rates of depression skyrocket, right? We saw that during the lockdowns. We need to learn. We need to take what we learned from COVID and apply it to the next step of the digital world, and make sure that we are protecting our freedom, our privacy, and our mental health. Nothing will speed socialism in America and an increase in the size, scope, and cost of government than having millions of people who are sucked into a metaverse like the one that Zuckerberg envisions.
And let's just finish on this note, because you raised a good point a minute ago when you said, of course, there are benefits to something like the metaverse, right? If you want to travel and see things around the world but can't afford it, this puts you right in the middle of it, where you can sense and feel and see all that is going on in actual reality. So it sounds amazing, but like anything else in America, here's where the limits come in. When people with good moral characters understand that they are born in God's image, right? And that one day they will be accountable to God for their actions on earth. That's what keeps the straight and narrow alive. But here in America, we are losing that faith-based culture. And that's what makes the metaverse the biggest danger. Do you agree?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's because who's going to put the guardrails into the metaverse? What law is going to apply in the metaverse?
Right.
Who's going to police the metaverse? And especially as you've got, this becomes a separate reality that millions and millions of people are going to participate in. It's going to come with real world consequences, but also consequences in the digital world, and there are no guardrails whatsoever.
Perilous times. Tom Basile, I want to thank you so much for coming on Bold and Blunt to discuss this. You should come back and we should look at it a little bit more in depth when we both have time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Cheryl. I appreciate it.
Metaverse. Got to stay on top of that. Got to check it out. Got to heed the warnings before it gets too late to do anything about it. I mean, Tom Basile's right. Is Mark Zuckerberg the type of guy that you want in charge of your life? Of your virtual reality life, or real life for that matter? He was the guy that created Face Mash in college when he was in Harvard. That was when he was scorned by women, so he took revenge and he created this site where he would post pictures of these women and call on fellow students to rate each woman, to rate them based on beauty or based on their ugliness factor. He took revenge. He took revenge on women because they didn't give him what he considered was proper attention. Who knows? Maybe he's changed. Maybe Mark is a saint now, but I tend to agree with Tom Basile. Is this the type of guy you want in charge of your life? This is where Metaverse is leading. Take heed. Take a time out to read a little bit more about the Metaverse and get a little bit louder about it with your elected officials. Because there comes a time, especially with technology, where there is a point of no return. And the Metaverse could very well be that point of no return. And we're talking about humanity. We're talking about God's creations. And that's something worth fighting for. I want to thank you for listening. If you want to subscribe to Bold and Blunt, please do so by going to the Washington Times or by going to edify.app/podcasts. And please check out my forthcoming book, Lockdown: The Socialist Plan to Take Away Your Freedom. It's available for pre-order now at Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, wherever fine books are sold, and it will give a revealing awareness of the bureaucracy that took place behind the scenes to justify the lockdowns on American citizens due to the coronavirus, and also warn about the left's continued push and press to keep the lockdowns in place. Check it out. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time, and in the meanwhile, stay blunt, stay bold.